Well, I was actually surprised, I had not preached for a while, to find myself saying, oh my gosh, we're at the end of Epiphany already. You know, it was 8 weeks ago that we celebrated Christmas. That's not too long ago. And often, depending on the church calendar year, we'll find the celebration of Easter, which is based on this incredibly complex calculation, which has to do with the first full moon after the vernal equinox, spring. And that sets Easter, and that's why it's different every year. So here we are with an early Easter, March 31st, and which means an early Lent, which starts this Wednesday coming. So I quickly said, well, I better catch up on where we've been. So, 8 weeks, are you ready? Jesus born, okay? Then, first Sunday after Christmas, John's Gospel tells us about in the beginning was the Word, and that Jesus was the light who came among humanity. Sunday after that, Jesus is on the world stage. The wise men come, and they want to see him, and Herod the king also wants to see him. The next Sunday, Jesus is baptized. Boy, if you were just thinking he was just out of diapers. He was now full grown, and there he was, baptized. And we have that voice coming, my Son, the beloved, in whom I am well pleased. And then, after that fifth Sunday, Jesus presents his first miracle at the wedding in Cana of Galilee. Then the following Sunday, the sixth Sunday, we have Jesus preaching and teaching. He appears in his own synagogue, in his own community within Nazareth, and he speaks from the scriptures of the words of Isaiah and tells the people that he is the fulfillment of God's promise. And in the next week, and in the next passage that follows that passage in Luke's Gospel, his own community rejects him. And then this Sunday, the last Sunday after the Epiphany, we have this incredible story of transfiguration. It occurs in Luke's Gospel, and we have been mostly in Luke's Gospel for this Epiphany season. Luke's Gospel being about that portrayal of Jesus as prophet and the fulfillment of God's promise that Jesus is Messiah. And yes, this Messiah has a mission and ministry to preach and teach and heal, and he is the model for our ministries. But wait, he is also rejected and crucified. But the story, as we know, does not end there. This gospel passage this morning comes immediately in Luke's Gospel after Jesus asks his disciples, who do people say that I am? Who do they think I am? Probably knocks them a little bit off of their heels and says, they respond quickly. One of them says, well, you're maybe just like a prophet, you know? You may be, how about John the Baptist? They think you're John the Baptist. Somebody else says, Elijah, come amongst us again to bring about the And then he says, but who do you think I am? And Peter makes that wonderful response. You, and in this particular gospel, knowing that there are other versions of this, he says, you are the Christ. The Christ of God. That Christ word meaning Messiah. The one promised. So shortly after that, Jesus goes off to pray into the mountain. On the mountain. It doesn't say into the mountains, it says on the mountain. Don't know what mountain it is. May have been one that was a very familiar place to them. To pray. And while he's praying, there is this transformation that comes before him, before them. Suddenly, they saw him talking with Moses and Elijah. And the three figures are transformed. You know, I couldn't help but think of this gospel this morning driving here from Canandaigua and looking at the dazzling white of transformation. And that's what they saw in their half-awake, half-asleep selves. And they hear Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus about his final days and his leaving and his going to Jerusalem. And as this incredibly hard to understand transformation begins to sort of dissipate and come back, this cloud comes in. And Peter says to Jesus, let's build some tents. Let's stay here. And we can have a tent for you and for Moses and for Elijah. And as usual, he had no idea what he was saying. And then this cloud appears, and this voice comes from the cloud that says, "This is my son, my chosen," the chosen one, Messiah. Listen to him. End of message. Jesus is alone with just the disciples. And they keep silent and move down the mountain. But they move back into the world. And we have this story of this man who comes about his own son, who more than likely is an epileptic, from what we can read in this story, which of course at that time was not deemed to be a problem, a medical problem that could be treated. It was deemed to be possession by some spirit. As they watched someone go into an epileptic seizure and have these wild movements and perhaps making sounds and foam coming out of the person's mouth, they assumed it was a spirit. Be that as it may, the disciples, who had already been commissioned by Jesus to do and teach and heal, had attempted to heal this boy. And they couldn't do it. And Jesus, in his frustration of having dealt with his disciples all this time, trying to help them to see who he is frustrated and says, you You faithless and perverse generation, how long must I be with you, and how long must I bear you? Those are not often quoted words of Jesus. I have yet to see a sampler that's been sewn that says those words. Give you something to think about and maybe work on. I'm afraid though it won't sell. It's a strong statement that they have not known who he is, and they've been with him all this time. So the question that runs through this passage this morning is, who is this man? Who is he? For God's sake, we don't know who he is. And so we have this last Sunday after the Epiphany, 8 weeks since he was born, when we proclaimed, Emmanuel, God is with us. Now we're in this place of asking again, who is this? There are many ways to capture the possibility of what Jesus is. This morning I want to just reflect on one of them, and that is the one that comes to us closely after Christmas. And it's not from Luke's gospel, it's from John's gospel. And it is about Jesus being the light. The light that has come into the world. The light that everyone wants and needs has come among us, and this light will not be put out by the world. The world will not overcome it. We are on the threshold of Lent. And today we have this incredible reminder that Jesus is the light. I'm thinking that this ultimate revelation is an assurance, an assurance to us before we get to Easter. That Jesus not only is the light that pierces the darkness, but is the light that darkness cannot overcome. And as we begin this threshold time of moving into Lent, I think it is an allowance that can help us, an assurance that can be there for us as we go through Lent. You see, I think much of what we know in life is not so much about light, but it's about darkness. We know a lot about darkness. I'd say you know quite a bit about darkness. I'd say if I asked you in the next 5 minutes to name all the darkness that has happened most recently in your life and in the life of the world, we would have a list that would knock us senseless. Two words. Newtown, Connecticut. Darkness. Name some other ones in the silence of this moment in your hearts. As we stand ready to enter into Lent, there is an invitation before us to examine not only the darkness of the world, but the darkness within our own hearts. It is a frightening and scary thing to examine that. But it is also today a place of hope. For the light that has come is with us, to accompany us and to guide us and to shine that light within us so that darkness may not overcome us. The great hope of the world amidst all of the darkness is the light. May it shine within you in the days to come.